Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at the Sun in Sagittarius squaring Saturn and Pisces and why this astrological configuration is often associated with things just reaching that point where they need to change or they need to stop. And I'm going to talk about why that is. I'm going to give you some other things to watch for along the way. We'll unpack this kind of on a philosophical and archetypal level, and give some real practical things to watch for, as well as some, I think, interesting ways that you can think about this transit in terms of spiritual growth. So that will be our agenda for today. We've got quite a few squares rolling through late Sag and hitting that Saturn and Pisces this month. So taking a look at each of them is going to be a really valuable way to spend our time here. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. If you are new to the channel, welcome. We've had a lot of new subscribers in the past couple of months. It's good to have you here. If you are watching but not yet subscribed, take a second to do that. It really helps us grow. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. This week, as you know, we are in the midst of our annual Kickstarter campaign for 12 years now, at the end of every year, to support the ongoing production of free content 7 days a week now, year round. We host a Kickstarter campaign and try to rally the support of people in our community, subscribers like yourself who appreciate the channel. We ask you to donate, pitch in, $5, $10, anything works. When you donate, you can also choose a reward. I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter page really quick. You can find the link pinned to the top of the comment section or in the description of this video. And when you scroll down, you're going to see the pledge to choose a reward. At the end of today's talk, I will tell you all about each of the rewards and what they offer, but a little sneak preview. There is a year ahead horoscope reading that includes all 12 whole sign horoscopes for the major transits of 2026. I think it ended up clocking in somewhere around 4 or 5 hours worth of content this year. It's a little different every year. And then the Astrology of the Year Ahead video, that's about an hour and a half long talk, just focused on all of the major transits of the year. So those are great rewards you can pick up. Probably the best thing that we have for those people who are studying at Nightlight are our class passes or class bundles, which take the cost of each program, get it about 50% off. If you bundle them, the savings goes up to about 70% off. So definitely our best sale of the year on all of our classes and courses, previous master classes, next year's master class, our guild membership. We have 4 years worth of professional training curriculum at Nightlight. So there is a ton to check out through the school that becomes discounted through this Kickstarter campaign. And what I ask is if this is a place that provides you along the year, monthly, weekly, however often you are here, if it provides you with some inspiration, if spiritually, if it's a place that you grow and learn, if the astrological insight is useful, you learn something new about astrology, and consider supporting us. This is how I earn my livelihood, and it's how I support a team of about 12 people now who are part of the school and behind the scenes, making sure that I can spend about 3 hours every single day creating this content, producing it, and curating it. So thank you so much to everyone who's already donated. We are off to a really good start, but we still need a really big push here to reach our goal of 2,043 backers. As of the time that I'm making this, we're somewhere over 500, between 500 and 600. I make these about a week in advance, so we still have a long way to go. But again, thanks to everyone who's already donated. Okay, on that note, let us now turn our attention to the real-time clock. We're going to take a look at this Sun-Saturn square today. Last week, we were looking at the Mars-Saturn dynamic, and that square came through first. And so we got a little sneak preview of just how challenging and sometimes frustrating squares to Saturn can be. Well, this is not an exception. The square from the Sun to Saturn can be a very frustrating, very difficult transit. Let's talk about why that is the case with the Sun and Saturn, and also what is the evolutionary reason that we encounter things like this. What did ancient mystics say about this dynamic? First of all, let's just note that as of today, Monday, December 15th, we can see that the Sun is just about 1.5 degrees away from the square. So if I push this forward Tuesday into Wednesday, we're going to see that square perfect. So let's just give it Monday, December 15th, all the way through Wednesday, December 17th as the most intense range that we're going to experience this week. That's the first 3 days of our week that we're in a Sun-Saturn window. Now, what I want you to notice is that not long after that, by this weekend, Venus will be getting into the square with Saturn and will come through Saturday and Sunday over the winter solstice. So later in the week, we're going to be revisiting this square with Venus one more time. Much further down the line, Mercury will get into the square. So all of these squares we also focused on in the monthly horoscopes. So if you wanted to go back and look at the monthly horoscopes for December, you're going to notice that this is where we spent our time. We focused on the squares happening between the whole sign house of Sagittarius and Pisces in your birth chart. Go back to those if you want a really nice take on sort of the cumulative effect of the squares across these two houses. Anyway, what we're dealing with now is the Sun's square to Saturn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 things to watch for, and then I'm going to give you some ideas about how you can work with this. I titled this talk, "This Pattern Has to Stop." That is one of my bullet points and one of the main ones that I want to spend time with today, explaining why we so frequently experience the feeling that something we've been doing or experiencing just can't keep going the way that it's been going when this square comes about. Why does that happen? And I want to try to break that down philosophically, and then we'll come back to it later on in today's talk. But let's just start with an understanding of the archetypes. It always behooves us to understand what might be called the archai, or the first principles of the planets, and what they represent about reality itself. So the sun is really, in many ways, the symbolic center of ancient astrology, insofar as the zodiac is the great circle of the ecliptic, or the sun. The sun is like right in the middle of the planets in the Chaldean order, and it's right at the center of everything. All the planets' latitude varies relative to the ecliptic. The zodiac is defined by the ecliptic, and the sun, like the fire in the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave, and like the sun in the real world outside of the cave, the sun becomes like analogs of higher truth. The cave wall level of truth for all of us is that process by means of which we study astrology and we come to recognize the archetypal patterning inherent within experience. We're still in the mundane world. We're still having the experience, but it's that we start to see, oh, look, the shadows flickering on the wall, the material unfolding of patterns is in fact patterns. That awareness is so exciting, to be able to start recognizing and seeing patterns in our everyday experience, and to be able to track them meaningfully along astrological lines, even predict them and describe them and so forth. For most of us, is so mind-blowing that we fall in love with astrology for the rest of our lives because of it, or any other symbolic system that has a meaningful way of mapping symbols into the unfolding of time-space events, right? The tarot for many people, the I Ching for me, certainly that's a big one. But then progressively, as we start to commune with the symbols, they allow us to start developing, let's just call it higher consciousness. Not that I have higher consciousness, but this is ideally what's supposed to be happening. That as we come to see our experiences in the world in light of the higher intelligent patterning, that we start to commune with our consciousness becomes more multidimensional. That expansion of consciousness is then connected to a greater sense of well-being and happiness for most of us, because we're able to contextualize suffering as an inherent part of patterns and how light and dark interplay within patterns. And so one of the most practical ways that we become enlightened within this world anyway with astrology is suffering takes on more multidimensionality, which means that suffering can be something that we appreciate or understand, or even have a kind of aesthetic appreciation for, in the same way that, requiems, we can appreciate the darkness and the sort of appropriateness of like minor chords on a guitar or something like that, right? So astrology is giving us this, and we're sort of progressing into higher truth. This is why the sun was rejoiced in the 9th house, the place of astrology and of higher wisdom in general. It's a Dharma house in Indian astrology, which means it's a house that we come to understand higher truth. So the sun was connected with all of that. But also, principally, when we think of the sun in ancient astrology, the word daimon was used, which is a word that denotes a kind of spirit guide that was thought to be assigned to each individual soul and through the daimon, who stirs up images in the mind and in the heart that become the compulsions that we follow that shape a lifetime, the desires, you might say, in Buddhism or yoga that shape our karma. But by that, we mean there are desires that lead our life that embed us in certain kinds of archetypal patterning, because the soul has this desire. It's here to explore that desire. And through that desire, we often exhaust that desire. It's sort of like saying, some people come into this life and they go, I just want to be so rich and famous and powerful. And that, if that's like a real thing, there are many ways in which that desire can play out. A person can try and fail and learn from that. A person can achieve a huge amount of power, but then realize that they're a jerk or have terrible, moral consequences for their behavior in some future lifetime because they suppress other people in the name of their desire for power. So the point is that for the ancient cosmologists, the sun in this world can represent all of the myriad different ways that our ambitions take shape and then find their ways into these patterns. The patterns have outcomes built into them. So the reason that we're able to predict meaningfully an outcome is because we find the context of a situation within a pattern, and a pattern contains the whole story in it. The seeds, the development, and the outcome are all inherent in an archetypal pattern. But not just one, there are many different outcomes and many different stories that a pattern contains. This is why we call archetypes multivalent. And so when we are able to see, as astrologers, I can see this is what someone's ambition is. I'm taking the light of an ideal image that they want or they desire, and then I'm locating it within a pattern. So, and then that pattern has consequences, meaning it has outcomes. This is why in ancient astrology, many of the texts were called apotelesmatics, which means the study of outcomes. But it wasn't so much that ancient astrologers were interested in outcomes as much as they were interested in the process of discerning the relationship between a context, the story in process, and the way that a pattern, a nonlinear, acausal, not bound by time, a pattern like a mandala, can speak to the most likely result or outcome, apotelesmatic, relative to a story that a person brings to a diviner. This is basically what we're all doing. Someone comes in and they say, this is the backstory, this is where I'm at, this is what I want for my outcome. We look at the patterns surrounding it or containing it. We have to learn how to do that through the technical language of astrology and its symbols. We locate it in a pattern. We look at the transits and we say, this is the most likely way it's going to play out. Or a sensitive astrologer will say, around this timeline, you'll see the outcome. And it could be like this or slightly like this or like that based on the patterns we're looking at, which planets are activating the karmic configuration in the chart and so on and so forth. I know this may be a little dense, but it's very important to make these points because this is going to help us understand why there's such a powerful dynamic at play when the sun squares Saturn. The point is that when a pattern rooted in a desire or an ambition, when a desire or ambition, comes together and starts cohering in an archetypal pattern, that pattern will eventually have a natural outcome or consequence that's part of the pattern, that's built into it. That sense of there being a final outcome, a consequence, that's Saturn. So when we reach the limit of a story arc, we reach its end. That ending of a story that is rooted in a desire or an ambition is what occurs when the sun squares Saturn. This is why, in a sense, dads or father figures or leaders often die or are displaced or may retire. Something as simple as retirement, something as difficult as death for father figures or solar figures can occur under this. Why? Because the sun, in addition to broadly representing ambitions, can also represent particular figures, particular people. And then we locate the end of that person or something related to them in Saturn. But if you extract literalness from the sun, and it's not a person, but it's more broadly speaking, an ambition, a desire, a hope, a wish, a plot line, which is frequently what the sun represents. In fact, Vettius Valens says this explicitly, that the sun represents the undertakings that human beings get very excited by thanks to their daimon, which is inherent in the sun. They go off and they do things that they're very excited about. So our ambitions, our sense of purpose, as we call it, and there's many purposes, but all of that is the sun. When we reach that point where the end of the story is here, the natural consequence of the choose your own adventure journey that we've taken shows up. This is a Sun-Saturn moment. You can see why trines and sextiles, or even conjunctions, on some level will typically feel better, because then the ending has something harmonious about it that's sort of built into the contact. When it's a square, we are often faced with the frustration of what we're trying to do or accomplish. The will, the agenda, the ambition, the direction, the plot line, because of the square to Saturn, meet with a result that is undesirable. You go, that's not what I wanted. Or I'm trying to get somewhere, but something is limiting me. That's one of Saturn's roles, is to not only provide consequence and outcome and finality for a story arc, which is why Saturn is associated with death, mortal death. The mortal body has a natural ending, and that ending is Saturn. But so too do all storylines. All storylines that play out in time and space along patterned lines have endings built into them, or outcomes. Same thing. So the Sun-Saturn is a moment of outcome, a moment of ending, and so forth. Now, you can understand why one of the places we're going to stop on our list today will be that familiar place that we sometimes get to where we say, this pattern has to stop. This pattern has to stop is often a tremendously beneficial spiritual moment that we meet along Sun-Saturn transits in our birth charts, along little mundane Sun-Saturn transits like this, which is just a few days long, but can still be very potent. Sun-Saturn dynamics, especially in birth charts, when Saturn is squaring, opposing, even conjoining your sun, there's often a very profound sense that something that I have been doing or trying to do, a plot that I've been following, an ambition that I've had, it has to stop. And this can be one of the deepest, most profound course corrections for the ego, because it gets to reflect on something unhealthy or unconscious in what it's been wanting and what it's been trying to do, what's been effective and what hasn't, what's been healthy and what's not. This has to stop now. So if you're facing that, we're going to explore that a little bit along the way. But now you get a feeling for Sun-Saturn. There's a lot more that can be said about Sun-Saturn, which we'll unpack through our 5 things to watch for now. So let's get into it. The first one is, we just mentioned, frustrated actions or ambitions. When you're trying to go somewhere, you're trying to get something, you're trying to become something, you're trying to cultivate something, all solar kinds of themes, and you meet with a block, a limit, a frustration, something that seems to be negating you, that archetypal experience is a Sun-Saturn experience. By the way, the sun is naturally opposite the signs of Saturn, and Saturn opposite the signs of the sun. Even in exaltation, the sun is opposite Saturn's exaltation and Saturn opposite the sun's. So Leo is opposite Aquarius. And we have Aquarius opposite Leo. And the luminaries in general is what I was trying to say. The moon is also opposite Saturn, and Saturn opposite the moon in Capricorn and Cancer. And so the light is generally opposed to dark. You can read that in ancient textbooks when they explain why the signs are placed against one another in the rulership scheme. It has to do with the alternation of light and dark. Well, what gives, for like an ancient Buddhist, for example, yogi is very similar. What gives the ego perpetual lifetimes? What gives the ego the sense of self, at least the self that we are gradually being liberated from to a higher self? What gives that, like, let's just call it temporary self in this body, in this lifetime, a sense of being alive, a sense of it's our desires. So desire was said to perpetuate the process of the soul continuing to take on forms in time and space. And quite frequently, it is when we, well, for example, when we die, in this body, in this lifetime, That's the end of those ambitions, isn't it? That's the end of all the things we were trying to get done here in like atom body. This lifetime, it'll be like, well, you got some stuff done. You did some things while you were here. You had a lot of actions and ambitions. Now they're all over, right? But what keeps that perpetually going, like one candle lighting another, lighting another, lighting another, and the soul transmigrating? It's unfulfilled, unexhausted desires for experience in this particular dimension of reality. That's what's said in these ancient traditions. And so one of the very promising things that can happen is when we meet with frustration. Sometimes for the ego, that's a very positive thing that can lead to relinquishment of attachments, especially where desires are unhealthy. When there's a desire for things that don't last, that can't really fulfill us, what may initially feel like a frustrated ambition or action, if we can receive on the level of the heart and soul, becomes an opportunity for soul spirit growth and ego diminishment. And the idea is not that the ego is evil, but that the ego makes a better servant of the higher self than, pretend master. Like rather than thinking it's the one, if our ego can start to say, in this body, in this lifetime, I have a temporary sense of self and it's in service to the higher self. Well, how does that happen? How does that reorientation of the ego's place in relation to the higher self occur? Well, according to all of these ancient traditions, it occurs when our wills, desires, and ambitions are frustrated, or we meet the end of them, or we exhaust them, or we realize that there's something sort of futile about all the striving. This is all Sun-Saturn. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. Although when you're in the midst of trying to pursue something you're ambitious about, it's really frustrating, All right. Another thing that can happen with the Sun and Saturn are delays, slowing down, and being more methodical. One of the things that I'm not the first person to remark on this. Many archetypal psychologists have said this. A hallmark of youth is enthusiasm and charisma. There's nothing like the kind of the vibration of charisma and certainty and conviction that we have in our 20s, for example. Maybe some of you listening to this are in your 20s, so I don't mean to sound condescending. That time of life is very much about excitement, inspiration, adventure, because you're spreading your wings. You're going out into the world, and we need it's been many times it's been youth movements. Like think of the 60s in particular, around major cultural upheavals and changes that are sometimes ideological or spiritual or artistic, that come through the revolutionary, youthful, charismatic impulse of a younger demographic. However, as we age and we get closer to the limits of this lifetime, the Saturnian reality sets in, and most of us will recognize that there really is a season for all things, first of all, before I go off into sounding all Saturnian here. So I'm not trying to say one is better than the other. There's just different seasons of life. But a Sun-Saturn season is one that rewards slow, thoughtful, digestion of events and experiences rather than explosions of conviction and charisma, for example. Slow, methodical, diligent development of skills and abilities, slow, methodical, diligent processing of events and experiences before coming to conclusions about them. Slow, methodical development of goals and ambitions, realizing that slowing down usually makes for better things. Like if you're an artist, there's probably a time where you come to recognize that like for me as a writer, the writing of the book itself is sort of the fastest, most exciting part. The editing, the revising, that's the part where a book goes from ideas and excitement into something really, really refined and special. I had so much less of a capacity for editing and revising when I was younger in graduate school in my 20s in creative writing than I do now. And I've just recognized that. I was telling my wife the other day, I was like, as I'm editing my book, I was like, gosh, I have so much more presence and patience for this process than I did in my late 20s when I was editing my first book. So a natural process of age, time, and it doesn't have to be connected to literal age, by the way. I'm using the metaphor of aging to be sort of Sun-Saturn like, but there are many people in their 20s who are slow and methodical. So please don't hear me wrong. I'm not trying to be like ageist. Is that I don't even know if that's the appropriate word, whatever. But you get what I'm saying? The slowing down, the being more diligent, the being more methodical, the realization that something that limits your ambition isn't necessarily squashing it. It might just be asking for you to refine it a little bit. That's a Sun-Saturn lesson that for many of us comes parallel to spiritual growth in life. Why? Because and Buddhists have said this many times, the spiritual ambition can become just as problematic as any other ambition, because when the ego thinks, I have to achieve enlightenment, now I desire enlightenment, that itself becomes one more thing that has to be shed. And unfortunately, one of the ways that often comes is through disillusionment and cynicism. And often you put people and teachers that are spiritual or traditions up on a pedestal. And then because you were too ambitious and put these things up too high, with the wrong kinds of ambitions around them, you end up having to knock them off the pedestals you put them on. I can reflect on doing this to a number of teachers I've had in my life. It wasn't their fault, it was mine, but I can see that now 20 years later. This is life though, isn't it? We all do this. So anyway, the point is that there's real benefit in slowing down or in meeting with things that seem to frustrate us, but are actually telling us to take our time and refine our ambitions or our process in some way. So, because you know what, that's spiritual life. We have to be what am I saying? Patient with our own spiritual progress and evolution. We have to be content to let life and the living of life be as important a teacher as anything super ambitious and methodical. Like, I'm going to meditate every day. I'm just going to get to nirvana, something like that. We have to chill out. And so sometimes the chilling out of ambitions, even spiritual ambitions, will happen under a Sun-Saturn, which initially can feel like something is casting doubt, or it almost feels like we have to reject something that 2 seconds ago was light and bright. I feel like one of the greatest accomplishments of my life, and it's such a silly thing, when I left the spiritual tradition, the Bhakti Yoga community that I was a part of, brought my name back to Adam, because I had taken an initiated name. When that occurred in my life, it didn't happen with any animosity toward the tradition or my guru. I left peacefully on good terms. I wouldn't have been able to do that 20 years earlier in my life. I wouldn't have been able to say, thank you. This is not, I don't need to polarize with you to make a shift. Do you know what I mean? That's such a Sun-Saturn dynamic, because frequently the Sun-Saturn will come up and try to create a mature shift, but it will do so by trying to create like black and white distinctions and polarization. So it's like a test in that way. All right. Well, before we go on, I am just briefly inserting that this Thursday night, this Thursday night, I have a webinar that I'm doing on the 11th house. So if you didn't know this already, I'm going to take you over to the website really quick. The 11th house is the place that was associated with some of the best karma that we experience in our lives. Why? Go to the live talks tab under events. You'll see my talk, the 11th house, hopes, wishes, and friends. This house is so much more than a house of community and groups. People get that wrong all the time, but we're going to dig into the ancient meaning and roots of this house and talk about it. So you can register over there to attend, and you get the recording if you can't make it live, of course, as always. All right, let's keep going here. The third thing on my list with Sun and Saturn is that good things are often shaped by pressure. When Sun and Saturn come up, it's everything that I've said about delays or slowing down, being more methodical, being frustrated, and the values potentially in those things are clear enough, right? But this one is fascinating because sometimes the Sun-Saturn just naturally are like creative contractions. So if I had to compare the Sun and Saturn to the most obvious creative contraction, it would be of labor, childbirth, delivery, right? A Sun-Saturn moment is about life force being released, but through this contractive kind of narrowing or limiting or focusing or tightening of conditions around the expression of creativity. One of the ways that creativity is understood astrologically is that creativity and desire they come really close to one another. That the way in which we create is connected to what we want or desire or wish for or hope for. And so when we're in the process of creating things that come from our heart, that come from our soul, that reflect something of the inherent goodness of what we are, it's very solar. This is why we talk about, Leo. We talk about Leo this way, the sun sign. Or even when we talk about the adventurous spirit of Aries, the place where the sun is exalted. So I want to create space, in other words, for ambition and desire to not just be something that needs to be extinguished and released, like all desire is just some kind of meaningless thing we're trying to get past on our way to enlightenment. There's also a meaningful participation in life. And I think the difference that we're all trying to find is what feels creatively aligned when it comes to desires and creativity versus what kinds of desires are sort of hijacking us and taking us outside the scope of our authentic nature. For example, many people report in the process of recovery from addiction that it feels like something in the impulse to drink, the desire to drink, has hijacked their real self. That's a very vivid, obvious example, but in many subtle ways too. How do certain selfish desires keep us from intimacy with the people we love? How do various fear and desire, sort of two sides of the same coin, but fears and desires, how do they kind of keep us from the best part of ourselves? But there's also when you really feel like you're in your heart, the things that you naturally desire are often very creative and very meaningful, and they bring light to other people. If you've ever been around someone and you say that person's really inspiring, usually what we mean by that is they're doing something creative with their life that reflects something aligned with their heart, their soul, their desires, and their expression of it. Well, I can't think of one person like that does not go through periods of time in which that creative expression has to go through this very narrow contractive space in order to crystallize somehow. But it's just the same thing as saying, like, think of how many people joyfully bring a child into the world. Not everyone does, of course, but like, if you're like, I want a child, I'm pregnant, I'm so excited. I think about how many moms I've talked to over the years in astrology consults. They find out they're pregnant. It's so exciting. And especially if you're with someone that you love, that you're, is like a supportive partner or not, but just the joy. I'm bringing forth something from me that's so creatively pure and beautiful. But still, that to bring that out, think of the intense contractive force that's there physically and spiritually and emotionally when a child is brought into the world. So good things are shaped by pressure in life, and that's part of it. So number 4 would be Sun-Saturn can be very authoritarian and heavy-handed. You do want to watch out for this. We don't want Sun-Saturn to come across as, here's my creative will, here's my creative way, and I'm going to express this in a way that is like abusive. So Sun-Saturn can be about the will becoming more and more and more contractive and forceful and domineering and limiting and narrow, which will often express in terms of like a mean dad or a like overly stern or strict authority figure or something like that. This can happen in us too. We can just get really narrow and strict and limited in our view, typically because we feel like our ambitions and our desires are something we have to be in If we're not in the driver's seat, we won't get what we want, or we won't have control over what we want. So control and willfulness, getting really strict and narrow and sort of limited, is a shadow of this transit for sure. Finally, this is the title of the talk today. This pattern has to stop. When the sun meets Saturn, it's often, and I think of James Hillman, who said this a lot in the whole body of his work, that so many different traditions and stories that have been told around planet Earth involve the moment of death. And we love to tell stories about the moment of death, people having near-death experiences. But one of the things that's like a hallmark of a near-death experience, or people who are work in hospice care or have been present for a lot of death in their life, is they say that at the very end, someone will have some of the most profound insights of their entire life. And it's like, oh my God, they come right at the end, like, and that there's typically this very familiar, like, I wish I would have loved more. I wish I would have just spent more time with my kids, or I wish I wouldn't have worked as much. And I remember my own grandparents, some of their final humble recognitions in their last days. My uncles who passed, one in particular who died of cancer, the insights at the very end are so profound. So let's take Saturn as a death metaphor. When the sun reaches Saturn, there's these just powerful moments where you can go, this way that I've been behaving, rooted in desires that I have had, ambitions that I've had, it has to stop. It has to end. There's a place where we all just reach the natural limit, and it's very enlightening. So isn't it funny how, like, when you get to a space where you're just like, I can't keep doing this and expecting a different result, or I can't keep doing this, it's killing my spirit, or the final moment before you die going, I can't believe I spent my life doing this. I should have done this other thing. All of those kinds of insights are very Sun-Saturn, in the sense that they're very powerful, they're very illuminating, they're very enlightening, but they come through the sort of grit of reaching a wall or a limit. This pattern has to stop. So if you're at a moment like that, it's pretty special. I've been reading a lot lately, some comparative religious philosophy, and one of the things that I was fascinated by is I was looking at a number of different traditions that say one of the most special moments in the enlightenment process for a soul, and this was coming from a Buddhist teacher, are the moments where it recognizes the futility of ambitions that have been perpetuating its suffering. Like when you go, I can't do this anymore, it's just suffering. It's too much suffering. That even if you don't have the willpower or the strength or whatever it is to make your life 10 times happier, the fact that you're at least clear that something is a dead end, that is a very powerful moment of change in a process that may go on for lifetimes, right? But nonetheless is like a benchmark. All right, one more thing to plug, and then I'm going to give you some final thoughts here. We have a live event this weekend in Minneapolis. If you are in the area, Minneapolis, St. Paul, we have a winter solstice gathering this Saturday. It's at 6 o'clock, and it is at the Grapevine Collective, the new city center in Minneapolis. You can go to the events tab, which is under the events page, go to the in-person events, and you can RSVP. It is free. We're going to be together from 6 to 8:30 p.m., meditating on the solstice, having some movement meditation, sharing, and then some time for community fellowship and snacks. Get some tea and cookies. It'll be great. It's free, so I hope to see you there. Just RSVP so we know you're coming. We know how much stuff to bring. All right, 3 little reminders for growth to sort of encapsulate some of the essence of this talk today. There's a saying in Eastern philosophy, which is that, people say, what about free will? And there's this saying that the will isn't free. It can never be free. Because as soon as the will acts within the material energy, it's in a pattern. It engages in a pattern that has different patterns of outcomes and fates that are part of them. So in that sense, it's never really free. As soon as you act, you're choosing to enter into like a mandala of patterns that have different outcomes that are more or less guaranteed, right? That's just the nature of the karmic world of these energies and patterns. And so these traditions will say, don't try to locate your freedom in will. Try to locate your freedom in consciousness. And this is what's meant by the will isn't free, but freedom is free. How does one start to shift the identity from the will or ambitions, which are going to be part of our life? We can't avoid them because we're embodied. Here we are. But how, while we're in a body that has will and directions and actions and ambitions, how do we start to identify with consciousness? One of the things that defines or that guides us toward identification with consciousness rather than identification with actions and results is the time we take between actions and results to reflect upon them, to be still, to be quiet, to listen, to be receptive, to be open. That reflective space, that contemplative space, that prayerful or meditative space can be found in so many different ways, but it's receptivity and reflection, that interior life of the soul whose nature is in consciousness, receptivity, responsiveness of consciousness, not necessarily as much in actions. So while we have to live a life filled with actions, this is a great transit to remind us that, if you are feeling frustrated or limited, or your ambitions feel like they're being thwarted, it's a good time to sit back and to find that meditative or contemplative space, because that's where you're going to remember you're free. You always are free. Despite the limits coming up in the world of will, your consciousness is free. 2, how one responds to adversity chooses the outcome inherent in the pattern. So when moments of adversity come up, they are often testing moments that direct us within the pattern that we're participating in toward which outcome within the pattern we're most likely to receive. For example, this has been said by a zillion people, but if you respond to adversity with a lot of complaining and blaming and whining and quitting and and pounding on things and throwing an existential tantrum, you are much more likely to start aligning yourself with a frustrating outcome. Whereas when you meet adversity with perseverance, acceptance, humility, curiosity, stick-to-itiveness, or even just a simple ability to accept failure, accept frustration, and just, those, in other words, we all know that we typically receive a different outcome when we respond that way to adversity. It's so simple. It sounds so cliched to say it like this, but how frequently do we forget this too? So if adversity is coming up for you right now, it's sort of like the adversity is presenting you in this exact moment with a choice, and what you choose and how you respond is going to be part of which outcome within the pattern you're in will express itself. Confidence, that doesn't mean it's all up to you either. I'm not trying to, but you see how there's that Sun-Saturn sense of responsibility creatively. How do I respond creatively is part of the consequence karmically I experience. That's a big part of a Sun-Saturn dynamic. Finally, confidence is built in failure as much as success. This is also like, if Adam's our gym coach for the day, gall darn it, get down and give me 10. Confidence is built in failure as much as success is just a way of saying that in many ways, what we're seeking in the realization of our aspirations or ambitions is a feeling of satisfaction. Just feeling good, feeling strong, feeling happy with ourselves. But the amazing thing is that feeling can be built in failure as much as success. In fact, many people who have become very successful have talked about how they weren't attached to outcomes. And whenever they failed in the process of trying something they wanted to succeed at, they had a way of looking at it as a learning experience, or they had a way of looking at it as character building. And when they chose that path, they slowly, gradually, choice by choice, to you know, choose a constructive way of responding to limitation or failure or difficulty or overwhelm, they started building confidence. I'm okay. So I'm okay enough to keep trying, or I'm okay enough to switch ambitions or stop trying with this one because I'm done. The building of confidence is about how we respond, right? So it's a great time to say my confidence is not dependent on my success or failure. It's dependent upon me and how I choose to look at my experiences right now. Again, it sounds like gym teacher advice, but that's the Sun-Saturn for you, you know? And if we scoff at how simple-minded it might seem and we say, oh, you know, like I think a lot of us want to say something like, no, things are really difficult. You can't just bypass it with like happy, constructive thinking. You know what? I'll be honest. There's probably 9 out of 10 people who choose to respond constructively or, you know, to maintain feeling good about themselves and confident despite failures or frustrations. 9 times out of 10, I'd way rather be around that kind of person than someone who thinks that it's somehow more honest or, you know, more realistic to choose to be negative because you have a reason to be. It's like, yeah, you have, but you know, if we play that game, you have a reason to be anything you want to be, you know, so that it's like, you know, it's like all the studies that are like, oh look, we found a we found a study that chocolate is good for you, and then oh look, we found a study that chocolate is bad for you. It's like you can make a case for absolutely anything you want to. And if you are trying to build confidence in your heart and soul, my point is that there's no reason you can't do that in how you respond to something not working as much as you build confidence by saying that, you know, that something did work. So keep that in mind. And if I need to just be like your annoying gym teacher for the day, I'll blame it. I'll blame it on the Sun-Saturn. Anyway, I hope this was useful. I'm going to sign off now. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not going to do that at all. I'm going to show you what's on my altar first before I forget. It's Monday. So I've been, like I said, I've been studying some comparative religious philosophy texts that I'm finding really beautiful. A lot of them are comparing Buddhism to Vedic philosophy and some connection to other Western esoteric traditions, but it's something I've been meaning to study more of for a while. Like what's the compare and contrast between Vedic philosophy and Buddhist philosophy? Because I know sort of I can describe those differences with some broad strokes, but I've been spending more time with it to really understand it more for myself in depth. Learning more about Buddhist philosophy and its relation to Vedic philosophy has been so fascinating. And I'm just so appreciative of all of the Buddhist teachers whose voices and texts I've been reading along the way. So I put the Buddha up. This is a little Buddha statue that we have. And I just put it on my altar this week to say thank you to this amazing stream of wisdom that I've been encountering. So, all right, that's horoscopes as the week goes on. We're going to be doing a live stream for Venus Saturn later in the week. You'll see that listed day and time under the live tab. I don't have it scheduled just yet, so it'll be there shortly though. But anyway, don't forget to donate and support the Kickstarter. We need a lot of support to get there. I'm going to tell you about the rewards that you can choose next. Thank you so much to everyone who loves and supports this channel. It means a lot to me. If you haven't pitched in yet, please head over to the Kickstarter. You find the link in the comment section or the description of the video. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you about the different rewards that are available when you donate and support this year's Kickstarter. Remember, our goal is to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve, and your contribution makes a huge difference. But when you do contribute, there are a variety of really cool gifts that we offer only once a year through the Kickstarter campaign. So I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter and tell you about what those are. You can also find more information about almost all of the rewards on our website, nightlightastrology.com. Any of the programs that you might want to take, all of the details about those programs, their start dates are all located on the website in case that's a question. But at the top, you'll notice on the right-hand side, when you're scrolling down on the Kickstarter, you're going to see the different rewards that are available at different pledge levels. The basic pledge level is the Astrology of 2026 calendar. This is a really nice PDF calendar that we make that gives you a feel for what transits I'm going to be covering on the channel as the year goes on. It's also really nice to know what the transits of the year are day by day. So if that appeals to you, it's the most basic level of pledge, and you can get that. Scrolling down, you can also bundle any of these. So if you want multiple rewards, you can bundle them upon checkout. You'll see how that works when you're in there pledging. Scroll down a little bit. There's a new talk that I've made. This is a brief talk on the value of silence and having a silent or meditative practice in your life, how you might get one started. And again, just what I see is the value of that for astrologers. Scroll down a little bit more. You'll see the Astrology of 2026 audio and video. This is an exclusive lecture where I break down all of the major transits and astrological signatures for the year ahead. I'm not releasing this anywhere else. So if you want my insights for the entirety of 2026, this is a great reward to pick up. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see that I have a guided meditation that I've created for your year ahead. This is more about spiritually, psychologically, emotionally focusing yourself for the year ahead. It's a special kind of guided meditation and visualization that I've created. So if that sounds appealing, you could pick that up. It's called The Oracle Within, a guided meditation. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see that my new book, which I plan on starting at the latest by the summer of 2026, you can get in on that chapter by chapter first draft release in audio and text form, just like The Oracle Speaks, my first book that I just finished. This is a new book that I'm starting in 2026. So if you wanted to hop in on the early release for that, you could do that there. Scroll down a little bit more and the description of that book and what it's all about is right there for you to check out. Year ahead horoscope readings. If you want to receive about 6 hours worth of content going through horoscopes for 2026 for all 12 rising signs, this is a great offering that's going to give you, again, about 6 hours worth of horoscopes for all 12 signs for the year ahead. I'm not releasing anywhere else, so check that out. Then you'll notice as you scroll down a variety of different archived masterclasses from previous years. There's one on the lunar nodes in ancient astrology. That's about 10 hours worth of content. The Magic and Mystery of the Fixed Stars, again, about 10 hours of content. Zen and the Art of Zodiacal Releasing, and the Alchemy of the Outer Planets. These are all lengthy master classes that I taught in previous years, about 10 hours of content per package. So a really great deal on some advanced content there. If you are brand spanking new to astrology, check out Astrology for Complete Beginners. This is a course that we have. It's about 10 to 12 hours worth of content that's meant for people who are brand new to astrology. This is like astrology level 0. So, but if that's you or someone you know who might benefit from just like a basic introduction to astrology, check out that audio video course. You get a website where it takes you through everything. You can watch it at your own pace and time. It's all recorded. The next offering is Ask 3 Horary Questions. You purchase this one and you get the ability to write to me anytime throughout 2026, 3 separate occasions to ask 3 separate horary questions, and I respond to those via email. That's a really great service. That saves you significantly off the course of horaries because you're bundling 3 together. So a really nice gift to use for yourself. Ask a couple of questions to me through horary form throughout the year. Scroll down and you'll see that I have only 30 of these. These are year ahead mini readings, very exclusive because I don't give readings anymore. I have students and staff taking clients through a special reading service. So my readings are very limited to classroom spaces, but I have 30 of these exclusive mini readings where I give you my take on your biggest transit for the year ahead in your birth chart. Those are personally recorded and sent to you. Then you'll see the 2025 Masterclass bundle, the 2024, and the 2023. These are, like upwards of 30 hours of content that are going to give you really deep exploration of a variety of topics. So those masterclass bundles are taking multiple series from previous years and bundling them together in one package. And you can see all the topics listed there, the 2025 bundle, the 2024 bundle, or the 2023 bundle. A really great way to package together a lot of intermediate to advanced level content that I've taught in the past. Then if you go down, the new 2026 masterclass series that I'm teaching is on the decans. So if you're interested in learning more about the decans and the upcoming 2026 masterclass, check this out. It's on sale right now through the Kickstarter. Won't be this cheap again. So a really good way to save on joining that program in 2026. If you have any questions about that program, you can find more information on the website through the page that's dedicated to the masterclass. Scroll down and you'll see we also have a new Nightlight Guild membership. This is ideal for people who are already enrolled in Nightlight or in the kind of Nightlight pipeline as students and are looking for more practice, more study at an intermediate to advanced level, we're meeting twice a month and doing live client readings, live horary workshops, a lot of practice with advanced concepts and techniques. So this is ideal for people who are really looking to continue developing within the Nightlight sphere. And so students in Nightlight, check this out, come study with us. This also includes every monthly webinar that I teach on the year, plus twice monthly meetings that are 2 hours each for advanced practice. So really nice to have a guild membership. This is something I've been wanting to develop for a while. Check that out. Scroll down, you'll see both of my wife's herbal apprenticeships, year 1 and year 2. If you like Ashley and her work, her YouTube channel, we own the same LLC. So we just thought we'd throw in her herbal apprenticeships at a discounted rate if you want to join those. And then really our most popular item are the class passes. So you'll see at the very bottom, you can attend 1 Nightlight course, 2 in a bundle, 3 in a bundle, or 4 in a bundle. And what that allows you to do at a really significantly discounted rate, this is our best sale of the year. We only do it through the Kickstarter. In those class passes, you can bundle and take year 1, year 2, year 3 in Hellenistic natal astrology. You can take the horary class, or you can take any yearly master class. And those class passes are going to allow you to then bundle together our programs and go through as many as you want. You could bundle 2 of them together, 3 or 4, or just 1. And it's going to be the best sale that we have on our courses for the year. So those are the different rewards we offer. If you have any questions about any of them, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. We deeply appreciate your support, and I hope that in exchange for donating and supporting this free content year round, that you will also find a valuable reward in one of these offerings. Remember that your donation supports a staff of people, myself, my family, the free production of all of this content year round. We deeply, deeply appreciate your contribution. All right. Hope you're having a great day. See you later. Bye.